Hi, I'm Mark Levinson. I'd like to tell you about the Daniel Hertz Maria 350 amplifier. First of all, the Maria 350 is a new way of amplifying audio. But the inspiration came from 1958. In 1958, my parents bought our first hi-fi system, which was a Scott integrated amplifier called a 222C, a Garrard turntable, and a speaker. We couldn't afford two speakers, so we just got one. And that was the music system that really introduced me to the world of recorded music, in particular to jazz, which I fell in love with at that time. And I wanted to become a jazz musician, mostly because of the recordings that I was listening to on that system. So what was that system really? Well, it was this little amplifier that put out about 12 watts a channel, connected to a speaker and a turntable on the other side. So you put on a record, turn up the volume, and that was it, right? So simple, so elegant. What do we have today? Piles of boxes, cables, all kind of stuff, getting more and more expensive and more complicated. And instead of being involved with the recording, with the musician and the repertoire, we're thinking about equipment all the time. You know, it's really kind of curious. So that inspired me to think in a new way, how can we, first of all, take audio to the next level so that we feel much more like we're listening to live music, where we feel something. And it's not just sound, but we have a real sense of being connected to the musicians and what they're doing and what they're playing. But at the same time, get the maximum in simplicity, in minimalism, like the old days when it was a turntable here and a speaker there and turn up the volume and that was it. Well, the product is the Maria 350. The Maria 350 is based on a new type of semiconductor. It's a new way of amplifying audio. It's not traditional transistors or vacuum tubes. It's a new design. It's a new semiconductor, which we call the Mighty Cat chip. Mighty Cat chip was designed by Dr. Skip Taylor. Skip is a dear friend and a true genius. In fact, a genius on three levels. First of all, designing the Mighty Cat chip, then designing the Mighty Cat software suite that's embedded in the Mighty Cat chip, and then in helping us to design the Maria 350 amplifier. So thanks to Skip for everything. He's really part of the soul of Daniel Hertz. So what is the Mighty Cat chip? The Mighty Cat chip is a single piece of silicon that replaces the DAC, the preamp, the power amp, and all the interconnect cables. It's compact, lightweight, low heat, fully programmable, energy efficient, but it's not like anything else. It's not a bunch of boxes tied together with cables. It's a new kind of chip. And to me, it just sounds a lot more like live music. And that seems to be the opinion of a lot of other people too. Mighty Cat is a piece of architecture. It has digital in with an I2S bus, and it has analog out. But it's a lot more than that. First of all, Mighty Cat has 12 equal channels that can be enabled. So for example, Maria 350 utilizes 2 of them for the speakers. It also uses 2 of them for the headphone out, but it can also use them for record outs or preamp outs and other things. So Mighty Cat is programmable. What feeds the I2S bus is whatever we decide to include. In this case, we have 3 analog inputs via high-performance A to D converters, USB, and coax. And on the output, Mighty Cat chip feeds power output modules with fully regulated power supplies that step up the power to the level that we decided on, which for the Maria 350 is 400 watts a channel into 8 ohms, 700 into 4, ability to drive 2 ohms, flat to 8 hertz, with almost unmeasurable distortion. So Mighty Cat has a digital in, analog out, but in the middle, it's got this amazing Mighty Cat software suite, which enables us to do some very cool things. First one is, Mighty Cat is the only semiconductor in the world that can run C-Wave. So all inputs are processed with C-Wave. Why is that important? Because digital audio creates negative neurophysiological effects. You could read our report on that and see for yourself. And C-Wave eliminates those negative effects. Basically, it makes all digital audio like pure analog. For real, okay? And that's only possible because the Mighty Cat chip is able to run C-Wave. It has the internal architecture to run it. The second thing is that the Mighty Cat chip has speaker tuning, another feature of the Mighty Cat software suite. Speaker tuning enables us to achieve what was never possible before, which is to make speakers that have all the 5 things that you need to feel like the musicians are in the room with you. High efficiency, deep bass, wide dynamic range, smooth frequency response at 20 kilohertz, and point source imaging. Without the Maria 350, the Mighty Cat chip, and the Mighty Cat software suite, that wouldn't happen. So how do you use that software suite? Well, for the Maria 350 amplifier, we tune the amplifier for each speaker. That is, each Daniel Hertz speaker. For non-Daniel Hertz speakers, we recommend leaving it flat because most manufacturers do a really good job. They get as much as they can out of their speakers and better just use the amplifier flat. But for Daniel Hertz speakers, it's different because we design them with the tuning in mind. Okay? That's how you find out how good the Maria 350 really is when you utilize all of its capabilities. As an example, for our new Anton speaker, we asked Ted Jensen, the great mastering engineer, if he would tune the Antons, and he did. So what does that mean? Well, if you look at Ted's history, you can see he does mastering for Norah Jones, for the Eagles, for Billy Joel, for Madonna, so many artists. He gets Norah Jones' voice right, and he got the Antons right too. And what that means is that when you have the system, your system was personally tuned by Ted Jensen. That's pretty cool. Now, what this really means is that it's not just an accident connecting an amplifier and a speaker together. You're getting a fine-tuned result that's only possible because we have the Mighty Cat chip. Now, the Maria 350 has other features as well. It has a headphone amplifier second to none because it's a Mighty Cat driving it. And it's tunable, so we can actually fine-tune for the particular headphones that you're using. And you won't believe the difference in sound. It's dramatic, just like for the speakers. We also have the capability of getting the amount of power that you really need to get effortless sound. Not that you want to play loud all the time, but that dynamic range gives you effortless music reproduction, light as a feather. The music just floats in the air. There's no sense of stress or strain. That's why you can listen for a long time with the Maria 350 and not get tired. Well, also because of C-Wave. But that effortless quality, that lightness, that's partly because the Maria 350 just never comes close to clipping. It has plenty of power to drive any good speaker. And with Daniel Hertz high-efficiency speakers, well, you almost never use more than a watt of power to listen to whatever you want. But you've got plenty of headroom. Some people ask why we use a plexiglass chassis. Well, the reason is I wanted Maria to look as different on the outside as it is on the inside. Nothing inside a Maria is like what you'll find in any other audio amplifier. Everything is different. And the outside now is as well. For example, you'll notice that the knobs are hand-polished stainless steel. It's like having 4 watch cases. Basically, it's the same thing as the finest watch cases that money can buy. And there's 4 of them because they never change. They never go bad. Stainless steel is forever. And that's our goal, is that the Maria will last a lifetime and maybe continue on to the next generation. And we want a chassis that has that same mirror finish, that same elegance, timeless beauty. And you know, whatever you do with aluminum, it's always aluminum, whether you anodize it or paint it or whatever. And the Maria chassis is solid. There's no paint. There's no anodizing. It's solid black mirror finish plexi. And we just think that it has an elegance that is timeless and that you can enjoy and be proud to own. The Maria 350 has an on button. When you push the on button, the Maria powers on. When you push it again, it goes into standby. Actually, the power stays on, but the audio is muted. The input selector gives you 3 analog inputs, USB and coax digital, and W, which is a unused input, but a future option, which we're saving when something really good comes along in the future. The volume control and the headphone jack. You unscrew this and you can plug your headphones in. To understand what the LEDs show you, take a look at the manual. I won't bore you right now with what they do, but you can read the details in the manual. That's it. It's real simple. One of the special features of the volume control of the Maria 350 is its exceptional dynamic range. If you have very efficient speakers, often with an amplifier, you just use the volume control down at the very beginning. It's hard to get some range on it. Or if you listen with very inefficient speakers, you have to crank the volume all the way up. Well, with the Maria 350, you have this huge dynamic range. It's an infinite control. So it's very easy to get the right volume with high efficiency speakers and most delicate music, or with inefficient speakers and the most powerful music. Everything's at your fingertips. There's no switching. It's just an infinite control that lets you get the volume that you want with any recording of music from any genre and any era. You will notice a W on the input selector, which at the moment stands for wish list. It means it's a future input for something that might come up, which then every Maria owner can have. The original idea was to make a Wi-Fi input, a Wi-Fi Bluetooth input. Well, we tried it, but it degraded the sound of all the other inputs. Maria was just too good. And we decided not to compromise the Maria 350 in any way, and we just left it out. For those of you who would like a Wi-Fi or Bluetooth input, there are quite a number of external devices that you can get and plug into for example, the coax digital input. They work fine, but we just don't want to do anything to compromise the performance of the Maria 350. Another thing people ask us is, what about the remote control? Does Maria have a remote? Well, actually it does, but it's not what you might think. The typical remote control is a little box and you push a button so the volume goes up and down. The Mighty Cat chip doesn't work like that. Any remote control that we tried like that degrades the performance of the Maria 350, and we refuse to compromise the sound. However, the Maria 350 is designed to be used with sources that have a volume control. A Windows PC, a Mac, a server, almost any modern source already has a volume control. And what I really enjoy is using a wireless keyboard and mouse in conjunction with a big OLED TV in between the speakers. Why? Well, because then you can enjoy any kind of music, video, movie, internet content, YouTube. It's all at your fingertips. And the system has two cables, basically. It has an HDMI from the computer to the TV, and it has a USB cable to Maria. It's that simple. So actually, people who own a Maria 350 have plenty of remote controls if they want them at their fingertips without compromising the amplifier. The Maria 350 is built with 1 megohm analog inputs. Why are 1 megohm analog inputs important? Well, we did research and we found that the load impedance makes a big difference in sound. For example, if you plug in a phono stage or a tape deck, the load impedance of the amplifier will affect the sound. If the load impedance is 10,000 ohms, not that great. 100,000 ohms, better. But at a megohm, 1 million ohms, that analog source is essentially unloaded, so it can work to its full potential. So if you want to hear how good your analog sources are, it's a lot better to use a 1 megohm analog input than something else. That's one reason why the analog inputs of the Maria 350 are so good. Now, some people ask, why don't we use balanced inputs? Well, I introduced balanced inputs to residential audio with cello in the 1980s. But I wrote a paper on it, and I said, well, the advantages are somewhat theoretical, but they're only possible if. And it turns out that actually balanced inputs do not sound as good as the 1 megohm unbalanced inputs of the Maria. The internal architecture of the Maria 350 is based on an input board and an output module. The input board has the Mighty Cat chip, all the analog and digital input stages, the headphone, amplifier, everything is on that input board. The output module has the high power output stages and regulated power supplies. And each of those comes out with a few screws. The Maria 350 essentially is one big board, one module, and a bunch of screws. And anybody with a screwdriver can take it apart and put it back together again. You don't worry about changing capacitors or resistors or transistors. That's gone. It's just a big main board and the output module with the power supplies on it. It's a very elegant piece of architecture. However, that input board is a piece of work, and the output module is as well. So the technology is extremely advanced, but the construction is extremely simple, which makes it a piece of cake to work on for the future. And in fact, it's easily upgradable. If we wanted to change the input board, the whole thing can be changed in 10 minutes. It's a very elegant concept. The Maria 350 has fully regulated power supplies. Now that's an expensive feature. You won't find many amplifiers with fully regulated power supplies. What does that mean? Well, most amplifiers have what's called an unregulated power supply. It means the power supply plugs in the wall and then gives DC to the amplifier. So essentially, the audio amplifier is connected to the AC coming from the wall. But in a fully regulated power supply, there's an amplifier in between the wall and the audio amplifier. It's a DC amplifier in between the wall and the audio amp. And it stabilizes the voltage and current so that the audio amplifier performs in the best possible way, regardless of the load. And you can see that there were some vacuum tube amplifiers from the early days that had it. And some of my cello amplifiers had regulated power supplies. It's an expensive feature. But the Maria 350 has fully regulated power supplies. And that's one of the reasons why people say that it has such authority, that it's so clean, that it's so rich, so full, and effortless. Well, that's because of engineering, and regulated power supplies are part of the story. Another feature of the Maria 350 is the grounding. Grounding is very important. Grounding is all about performance. You need a rock solid ground to get the best performance, but that's not always that easy to get. Maria 350 is engineered to have basically perfect grounding. There's a large aluminum plate on the base of the amplifier, and everything is connected through that massive plate. It's a refinement that you won't find in most amplifiers. You might notice that there are companies selling grounding plates and grounding schemes outside, but Maria has it on the inside. So just plug and play. In general, Maria doesn't need anything external because it's all engineered to work from the beginning on the inside. Can I tell you a little secret about the Maria 350? Do you see this H on the front panel? Well, we were trying to figure out how to make it look right, and we couldn't. And then we got the idea to make a hand-polished stainless steel disc with the H reverse printed in black. It means that the H is actually the stainless steel, and inset it into the front panel. And wow, it looks great. Well, it's not easy. It's expensive. But you know what? It represents the spirit of no compromise. That's what the Maria 350 is. We refuse to compromise the music. And this little H here tells you that message in a very elegant, soft way. Another thing that sets the Maria 350 apart is bass reproduction. Low frequencies are the foundation of the music. You know, it's very curious. If you look at the frequency response graphs of most speakers, in general, you'll see a bump of 5 dB to 10 dB around 100 hertz, maybe 80 hertz. You'll see this big bump, and then crashing below 50 hertz. Where's the bass? Where's the bass that is in life? Now, at Daniel Hertz, we've done a lot to reproduce bass energy in a new way. And the Maria 350 is designed to reproduce bass way down deep, and our speakers are tuned to be able to do that. So instead of this bump at 100 hertz and then crashing below 50, we're talking about linear response down to 20 hertz. The Anton speaker, for example, is only -2 at 27 hertz. So that kind of deep bass gives you the foundation to balance the clarity, the details that you want in the mid and high frequencies. Bass reproduction is really something that's overlooked in audio for a long time. Now, in the early days of audio, people paid more attention to it because they had these big speakers and they weren't afraid of real estate. But today, everybody wants these thin audiophile speakers and so forth and so on. Where's the bass? Where's the foundation of the music? The Maria 350 is not just about being clear and warm and open. It's about reproducing that fundamental deep bass that gives music its foundation. One of the most important aspects of music reproduction, in my opinion, is speed. The ability to hear the beginnings of the notes. It's not about just sound, and it's not about loud. It's about hearing the beginnings of the notes, the details that tell you that it's alive. It's about vitality. And that kind of life energy, speed, is not just detail. It's just vitality is something that is really unique about the Maria 350. If I thought that transistors or tubes would do it better, I'd use them. But the Mighty Cat chip is in a class of its own. The first thing that you'll notice with the Maria 350 is this incredible lightness, this speed, this immediacy, this transparency that you get with live instruments. Of course, they're not recorded, so hopefully it's like that. But Maria 350 reproduces that kind of speed, lightness, clarity, effortless sound. And the Mighty Cat chip is the only technology that I've come across that's in that class, and that's why we use it. The Maria 350 is the 2-channel amplifier. The Maria 800 is the same, but 4 channels. The Maria 800 drives biamplified speakers, like the Daniel Hertz Chiara system, M4 and M1, and M1 Delta, our flagship. If you're interested in the ultimate in music reproduction, if you love music and price is really no object, I would suggest that you look at our biamplified systems. The Maria 350 is a 2-channel amplifier which produces the same quality of sound, has the same modules in it, but it's 2 channels instead of 4. The Maria 800 has active crossovers enabled, time alignment, and other refinements that are used to drive biamplified speakers with the best possible performance. You don't need a Maria 800 unless you have biamplified speakers. In the early days of audio, people played records, actually starting with 78s and then going to the LP. I grew up in the analog era. There was no digital of any kind. But in the 1970s, digital audio was introduced. And today, essentially, we live in a world of digital audio. Now, some people think that if they have LPs, that it's analog. And that may be true if the LP was made before 1978. But the majority of LPs today are digitally mastered. It's a digital signal, maybe on a vinyl record, but it's basically like a CD. And Maria fixes digitally mastered LPs as well. So we get the benefit of the Maria 350 not only with typical digital sources like streaming or CDs or downloads, but also with digitally mastered analog recordings like you will find on some LPs. And that's important because we want the Maria 350 to be universal, to make it possible to enjoy all recordings from any era, any genre, with the most real, lifelike emotion, and that's only possible if you fix digital. Okay. And as far as we know, there's no other way to do that than C-Wave. One of the most important developments in audio these days is streaming. The first time that I heard Qobuz, I was astonished. The sound was just amazing. I mean, it was really great. And then I realized it's really like listening to analog master tapes. Because what are they doing? They're taking the master recording. If it was analog, they're making a WAV file from it. Or if it's a digital master, I'll make it from that. And that's what you're getting. It's incredibly pure. The problem is how to turn that into the best sound. That's the job of the Maria 350, to take the signal from streaming and turn it into the best quality source that you can get. Now, the best recordings are generally made on Macs or Windows PCs. That's where they come from. Why can't you play them back on one? Well, you can, especially if you have the right USB cable and you have a Maria. So if you have a Maria, everything changes. A Windows PC or a Mac is a great source with an Intona USB cable and USB isolator. You're pretty much there. I mean, I would say that's the sound of analog master tapes. Since the beginning of audio, prices of equipment have gone up and up, right? Bigger and heavier boxes and prices that go up and up and up. But that's not the worst of it. There are products that just come and go, come and go, come and go. I'm very proud of the fact that my first product, the LMP2 preamplifier, sells today for 3 times its original price. People love them and treasure them, and they work. The Maria 350 is built like that. It's designed to last you a lifetime and to work for the next generations, after us. That kind of intent is different than the come and go philosophy that's typical in audio today. When you get a Maria 350, rest assured, it's not a product that's designed to come and go. It's designed to keep you company for the rest of your life. And to do that, it has to be almost unimprovable. In other words, it has to be so good that there's almost no way to make it better. But that's what it's designed to do. Maria 350 is sort of a handmade musical instrument, if you will. It's really not an industrial product. It's a hand-built artisanal product designed forever, to be on the planet forever. Many years ago, we used parts made by Jack and Randy Widener in Connecticut, USA. Incredible artisans. And one day, Randy told me, "You know why we like making parts for you, Mark?" Why? Because nobody will ever throw out one of your products. We make parts for different companies, but they use the parts and then maybe they get thrown out someday, but not with you. So your products are on the planet forever. And that's really at the heart of what we're trying to do here, is to make products that will last you for the rest of your life and go on and be useful for the next generation. To back that up, let's take a look at the specifications of the Maria 350. First, if you look at the first preamplifier I made in 1974 called the LNP2, what was the dynamic range? Dynamic range means from the noise to maximum signal. What is that? Well, on a CD, it's 95 dB, okay? On high-resolution audio, it's much more. In 1974, what was the dynamic range of the LNP2? It was 140 dB. That's an incredible specification, better than most preamplifiers today. Well, let's look at the Maria 350 specifications, okay? First of all, we're looking at frequency response flat as a ruler, plus or minus a tenth or 2/10 of a dB from 20 to 20 kilohertz. We're looking at almost unmeasurable distortion. Some amplifiers have 0.1% distortion, or others have 0.01, and a few say 0.001. Well, Maria is typically 0.0001 or 2% distortion across the audio band. It's pretty much at the theoretical limits of what you can measure with an audio precision distortion analyzer, which is the best you can get. It has the ability to drive 2 ohms. It's flat to 8 hertz. I don't know how to make it better. I really don't. I mean, what could I possibly do to improve that? Inaudible noise, even with highly efficient speakers. Enough gain to drive the most inefficient speakers. Enough output current to drive any speaker on the planet. I just don't know what we could do to make it better. It's all there. Now, the Maria 350 might look simple. It may be lightweight, compact, but it's a beast in terms of its performance. Don't be fooled by what it looks like, especially if you're used to big, heavy boxes. Maria 350 is the last amplifier you will need to buy, in my opinion.